What's up, killers? What's going on? I had a good afternoon of shooting. I'll post some of the pictures and some videos. What I have to do now, so the 20 pin is sighted in, elevation and windage. That is awesome. So now, the next step that I got to do, and I'll make a better video to show you exactly what I'm doing, is what I was talking about the other night in the live. I actually have to crack loose 2 screws, and there's an indicator arrow that lands on each pin, so you know what yardage you're at. And then when you crank your dial, that indicator pin goes to the fiber optic pin 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. What I have to do now is, now that I know my 20, I have to adjust that pin so it lands perfectly on the 20-yard indicator. Next step, sometime this weekend, probably Saturday afternoon, I will have to start shooting at 30. So I could do that in my backyard. I'm lucky enough for that. I could probably even shoot out to 40 in my backyard, which is nice. I'm gonna rig up a little bit of a backstop with some moving blankets, probably about 3 of those, drape them down loose, a little bit wider, just in case. But right now, I mean, I'm punching real good at 20. So check this out. This is the part that I was talking about here. This is my actual sight, the sight housing. And these 2 screws here is where it mounts just to, let's just call this the bracket, the mounting bracket for the sight. Now, what Trophy Ridge did, and it ended up being a really good idea, obviously they know what they're doing, they drilled the machine threads in multiple locations. And now that I know what that's for, it makes really good sense that they did that. What you can do is you can physically remove your whole sight housing from the bracket and physically move this either up or down. And what that'll do is that'll help you with your slider adjustments if you get maxed out one way or another when you're trying to sight in. So I don't have to do anything now. I'm all good to go, but you can see there's 1 hole left at the bottom here. And that's where I had started out. This screw here was in this machined hole, and then my upper screw here was underneath this bracket, wherever the next hole is. You're not going to be able to see it because of this piece here. What that's going to allow me to do now, and I already did it, now I'm going to be able to zero in. You see that little arrow right there? What I need to do is I need to loosen these 2 screws here with an Allen key and drop that bracket down. You can see how it's oblong the way they machined it. So if you just loosen them, you don't have to tighten them, take them out, I mean. You just have to loosen them. That bracket will slide down, and I'm going to stop it when that stainless steel indicator drops dead center on that white indicator pin. And that will officially be my 20 pin. I'm going to give you a little bit better view here. I got the camera in the tripod, and maybe you can see a little bit better what I'm talking about. So my next step is going to be loosen this screw here and that screw. When I loosen those, you don't have to take them out. This bracket, which is connected to here, I'll be able to slide down, and I want that dead center, that white indicator pin, and that will represent my 20-yard pin. So here we go. These shouldn't be too tight. Again, there's no force on these. They just act as a friction stop. So I was able to go in with the long shank of the index key and break it loose. You don't need a lot of torque. You don't need a lot of force. So I'll keep that in mind. If something feels tight, excessively tight, chances are something's locked down. It may have a little Loctite on it. So just be careful. Anytime you're working on your bow, you want to treat it nice and gentle. So I'm just going to land this dead center on that top indicator that we've been talking about, and that will be my established 20-yard pin. Again, going with the long shank of the index key, of the Allen key, excuse me. Long shank down, and just a few pounds of torque, if you want to call it. Not a lot at all. These are locked down. We'll just double check. Good. And bear with me, I'll pan this camera up here. And now, that pin is now resting perfectly on that white indicator pin, which equals 20 yards. So sometime this weekend, probably Saturday, my next pin that I'm going to try and achieve would be the next pin, and it just so happens to be red, and that would indicate my 30-yard pin. So what I would do is I break the friction stay loose here. Once you break that loose, you come around to the other side, and then I would start cranking on my wheel. And what that's going to do is when I turn this wheel, my sight housing will roll up or roll down depending on which way I turn it. Once 30 yards is established, what I'm then going to do is this Allen key here needs to be adjusted. After you break your friction stay loose, again, your friction stay for your elevation must be loose to adjust this one here. Once your 30 pin is established, this right here will adjust the spacing of the rest of your pins only after your 20 pin. Your 20 pin does not move with that adjustment. So it will adjust all of these, red, white, and depending on which way you crank that, and this is labeled up here, if you crank it up or down, if you crank it down, the spacing on here between pins will get larger. If you crank it the opposite way, going up, the spacing on these pins will get tighter, smaller. So once you have your 30-yard pin set, you now use this micro adjustment screw to get your indicator pin landing perfectly on 30. Obviously right now it's still dialed at 20. But once you set that 30-yard pin, these spaces here for 40, 50, 60 are already predetermined. And that's due to the React technology from Trophy Rigs. That's like their patented technology. Definitely new, working with an adjustable sight. Obviously, anything that's new, it's going to take a little time to get used to. However, I would say that for me, a first-time user of an adjustable sight, this one is definitely user-friendly. It's made with good materials. There's a lot of metal on there, very little plastic even, which I happen to like. It is a little heavy. I don't think it's excessively heavy by any means, but it could also be how far out the sight projects past my riser. Last item to that is, it's also new, just like I said. So this whole setup here, this housing, the length of it, the weight of it, is completely different than my factory horizontal pin sight. So I am not complaining at all when I say it may be heavier. That could just be me until I get used to it. But if anything, I don't mind a little extra weight towards the front. I've gotten a lot of compliments that this bow is super quiet, and I happen to agree. So for hunting purposes, I'm all about that. I think I've pretty much covered everything for now. Obviously, there's a windage adjustment. Windage, same thing. Crack your friction, stay loose. You have a micro adjustment knob on the side here. Everything's got hash marks. If you think about it like a tape measure, it would almost look like 16 intervals. But I haven't gone that crazy. I'm all right. If I was shooting left, I moved the housing over 2 hash marks. So what is that, 1/8 of an inch? You just got to keep track. That's the biggest thing. Don't just start spinning these knobs. Take your time. Make sure you know where you're at before you start moving anything. If anything feels tight, make sure your friction stays aren't on. I made that mistake once already in the very beginning.